eh. Hey there, Gracious Gang. It's Mike from thegraciousguest.org here, and I really am excited to jump into this little mini review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny just for a few minutes here today. But before I do that, please make sure you like this content, subscribe to the channel, share this if you think it's worthwhile, for somebody else to maybe check out. And I really appreciate that. It helps get the word spread about the channel. And, I haven't done a film review in a while. I wasn't really sure that I was going to do this one per se. I've got a lot of other things going on right now, and was just happy to be able to see the movie and to be able to fit that into the busy schedule, quite frankly. But I actually had a number of people on YouTube and the subscribers that actually wanted to see this. They requested specifically to have a kind of Mike Creavey's thoughts on Indiana Jones 5. And to be fair, I want to just encourage you to check out, if you really want a quick snapshot of my honest opinion of the movie in kind of a comedic nutshell sort of way, you want to check out this link here to Ryan George's most recent Screen Rant pitch meeting on Indiana Jones 5, which is pretty hilarious. And so I don't want to steal Ryan's thunder. I get a kick out of his channel. That actually had some really good observations in it, so make sure you check that out. And I have it linked there and linked below. But I had my issues with Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I know that's sort of fashionable, for people to say. And a lot of people, and some of you, had commented that you had heard that this was worse than that one, or it was a little bit better than that one. And there's a lot of comparison. But I tend to, in general, my approach to the Indiana Jones movies, since that one came out, really, is, it's just not, I think, fair, quite frankly, to compare anything after The Last Crusade to that era, for a lot of reasons. I'm no ageist, but the fact is, Harrison Ford, when he was in his 40s, like I think he was 37 or 38, I want to say, when the first one came out, something like that, or maybe more like 38, 39, about my age, when Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. And when The Last Crusade came out, he was 47. So that movie is very characteristic in some ways, just of the actor portraying that role of a character in that era of his life. When you're at that era of your life, it's not the same as when you're in your 20s. It's not the same as when you're 80. And so there's a lot of people, I think, who've been maybe unfairly critical of both Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny from the age perspective, and the way that factors into the story. And I guess my response is, look, I get it, but I just don't really understand what you want. Do you want at the time, a 65-year-old Harrison Ford to be doing all of the things that a 40-year-old Harrison Ford did? That's the actor, of course. Now, the character, same thing. Does it make sense to have a 65-year-old Indiana Jones doing what a 40-year-old Indiana Jones is doing? No, it just doesn't. All the more with this one, just on the surface of it. What do you expect from an 80-year-old Henry Jones Jr.? So to take an honest look at that, if you want to tell this story, if it's a worthwhile endeavor, and there's a debate about that, right? I'm not sure entirely where I fall right now. I think, quite frankly, it wasn't a story that really needed to be told in a lot of ways. I was excited just to go to the movie and see an Indiana Jones movie. I was deployed when Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, so I didn't see it in theaters. I saw a, let's just say, not great quality copy of it that somebody had, probably inappropriately obtained. It was one of those things. But I saw a grainy kind of version of it. I later watched it on streaming. I've watched it again recently. I didn't really think that story needed to be told per se. I'm with the camp that basically says, look, what is a better wrap up to this character than literally riding off into the sunset, with Indy and his dad and Sala and Marcus Brody at the end of The Last Crusade. To this day, and I mean, it keeps coming up every time I rewatch the movies. My favorite one is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I just, it's the one that's the most enjoyable for me for a lot of reasons, you know. My second favorite, if I could put it that way, or tied maybe with Last Crusade, is the original. Raiders of the Lost Ark just set the pace for everything, you know. And it was at a time where it was, in terms of American cinema, it was a nostalgic period, you know, in the early 80s, or the 80s in general, right? This nostalgic period for the 50s, the 40s, that this kind of golden age of cinema, and these romping kind of adventure stories and stuff, that very much affected George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg, and you know, Harrison Ford would have grown up watching a lot of those things as well. So there's a nostalgia factor, I feel like, built into that fits that era of cinema that maybe just doesn't now. And so what's weird is you have these movies, you know, Crystal Skull and now Dial of Destiny, they're like nostalgic for early Indiana Jones. So it's a little self-referential in that regard. And I remember years back, after Crystal Skull came out, maybe 2 years later, I stumbled at a church, what's it called? Church flea market. I stumbled into the book room and movies. I stumbled across I didn't stumble in there. I stumbled across a boxed set, a DVD box set of the Indiana Jones movies. And it was Raiders, Temple of Doom, which is my least favorite of the originals. Some of you love it. God bless you. I don't like it as much as the first and the third. But I stumbled upon a box set that had those three, you know, the original three, and like a bonus features DVD, and that was the boxed set, right, for a long time. I have that box set. I don't need it anymore because I can stream it, but it's like, there's something in my mind pleasant and sort of, I don't know, appealing about the notion of looking at those movies from my childhood as the Indiana Jones movies. Like, in my mind, that's kind of the canon film set. And then there's the more recent ones, which I like to think of sometimes. Some part of me thinks of them as like dreams that Indy has had when he's old. Like, he's just like, he's done, right? He hasn't done anything big quite that way since Last Crusade, and his life has kind of, you know, moved in this direction, and it's a little more mellow, and he doesn't go on adventures anymore, but he occasionally dreams, and sometimes it's a nightmare, and sometimes it doesn't make sense, you know. I love Kate Blanchett as an actress, but her character in Crystal Skull was just off-putting. Like, I thought it was kind of comical, you know. That's my opinion, right? All of this is my opinion. But just to kind of focus on Dial of Destiny and kind of bring this home, because I said I want to keep this pretty short. I'd say I liked it better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I thought the plot was a little less meandering and made a little more sense just in general than that one. The graphic stuff, like CGI stuff, was better in this. It was notoriously weird for some reason, and I can't quite put my finger on it in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I thought it worked better in this. I thought it looked good. It was fun. The music's great. I mean, no, I don't think anybody criticizes John Williams, you know. So that was good. The opening sequence was entertaining. It was neat to see Indy back in his element from that time period, more or less, that we're used to with this de-aging segment, the whole first act. That being said, it was weird. I know other people have pointed this out. It was weird to not have done anything at all, at least as far as I can tell, with his voice. You know, so what you have basically is 80-year-old or 78 when they're filming it, or whatever, 80-year-old Harrison Ford body acting most of what you're seeing and hearing his voice as an 80-year-old. And you don't sound the same way when you're 80 that you do when you're in your 40s. You don't sound the same way. You don't sound the same way. You don't walk the same way. You know, and it wasn't very hard to notice a couple times that he has this kind of older man kind of you know, movements and that kind of stuff, which, again, I'm not criticizing him. He's 80 years old, you know, but it's just not like your eye can see it. It can kind of detect, and your ear can hear, like, that's something's So I thought it was good as far as it went. It achieved the objective for me of having this opening sequence, and it was a pretty cool series of very Indiana Jones-esque type things. and I enjoyed it. There were some callbacks, the top of the train thing, that reminded me a little bit of that. But again, a lot of the CG, a lot of it's not real practical effects, and you can tell, the main storyline, cool, neat idea. I didn't mind Helena Shaw's character that much. I thought Phoebe Waller-Bridge did a good job. And for those complaining that this movie's just woke trash and all that kind of stuff, look, not as much as anything else that's out, or it's not anymore, in that regard, if that's something that's concerning to you. I thought it was a little over the top at points with her character. I didn't really feel as strongly as maybe some others that she stole the show or that it became her movie. There's definitely a lot of banter between them back and forth. She's picking on him about his age and all this. But something else I've heard some people point out, I think rightly, in reviewing this is, look, like I was saying earlier, he is 80. When you are at that age, which I've never been, but, reflecting on this, there are a different series of things to consider. You're looking at life through different lenses than you did when you were 40. And, I thought the movie purposely had at the core of it, in the writing, in the dialogue, the fact that he isn't who he used to be. And I don't mind that. I think, in general, I don't mind that being addressed in a movie, even with a beloved character. But I keep coming back to, like, did you need to do it with Indy? I could have done without it. But when they decided to do it, and they decided that's the way they were going to go, I think if you are going to go that path, it makes sense. It makes sense to do that. I thought a lot of the movie had him much more in his element in some ways than even Crystal Skull did. I thought there were aspects of it where his character was more authentic and more in line with the originals than Crystal Skull was. But when it's all said and done, what was my overall takeaway from it? You should see it. I think it's fun. But if you think for 2 seconds it's going to be anything like the original 3, it's just not, So don't worry about it, basically would be my argument. And all the promotional stuff, of course Disney's going to do everything they can to try to, drum it up. I mean, I worked in psychological operations in the Army for long enough to know how influence campaigns work, and of course they're going to try to do everything they can to equal it to the original movies. It's in their best interest to do that. Money, basically. Well, again, watch Ryan's video. Ryan's pitch meeting is fantastic. And it's that's just the name of the game, I think, in a lot of ways. So my final takeaway from Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is, if you love Indiana Jones, I think there's things in this that will be enjoyable to you, but I think you will probably come away from it saying, maybe glad I saw it. I don't think it will. It might not. It may. It's up to you. I don't think it will maybe rock your world and be as disappointing maybe as Crystal Skull was after years and years of waiting for an indie movie to come out. I mean, it was 2008, 18. It was 19 years. It was almost 20 years from the release of the Last Crusade until the release of Crystal Skull. So that's a lot of time for people to build up what they want it to be. Same thing happens with Star Wars fans. Once that came out, now you didn't have more indie movies coming out frequently after that like we do with Star Wars, where you can kind of tweak it and weigh them one-on-one. So you had another long wait, good, I can't do math, 15 years? Yeah, 15 years. They wanted it to be less, but things got messed up with COVID and all sorts of things. But, you have another 15 years, almost the same amount of time till this one, but you had the experience of Crystal Skull that a lot of us were ready to compare this to anyway. But yeah, I would say check it out. It's a fun watch. It has its moments, some interesting stuff. Nothing like the originals. And so when I'm watching Indiana Jones movies, I will always default back to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and for me personally, the Last Crusade, which is one of my favorite movies ever. And by the way, the last Indiana Jones movie I had seen in theaters when I was like 5 years old, before I saw this one in a theater. So that was kind of a neat way. I compare this in some ways to Last Crusade because of that, oddly enough. So I'm not the same person I was when I was 5. You're not the same person you were when you ever saw the original movies or even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So check out Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. Check out Ryan George's pitch meeting for the same. And until next time, don't forget to wonder. Take care.